Welcome to Sportsman's Park in Cicero, Illinois, just outside of Chicago for the opening of the 1985 Breeders' Crown Championship Series. It all begins tonight just outside of Chicago with a trot for older horses. Hi, everybody. I'm Sharon Smith, along with Stan Bergstein, who's joining us this year. He's the Executive Vice President of Harness Tracks of America, was a former racing secretary here at Sportsman's and a track announcer, so it's sort of like coming home. Sportsman's one of the new race tracks in the series this year. It's not a new track. It's a very historic one. New races as well, and that's really a great deal of the excitement this year. We are seeing a race for the older horses. The vernacular calls them aged. In fact, they are probably horses at the peak of their racing careers, so this is very exciting.
They are, Sharon. The horses have reached maturity. In the past, last year, the Breeders' Crown was for 2- and 3-year-olds. This year, they've added division for older horses, 4-year-olds up, which are, of course, the horses that have reached the peak of their form, and we're going to see that tonight, championship form with true champions in action.
And there are the trotters tonight, and in fact next week the older pacers. So we're seeing a world record holder, a recent world record setter tonight. Next week we will see the richest harness horse of all time on the road again, assuming he stays sound and he's made of iron, so we can probably think he will be. The races coming up, well, look at the list. There are just some outstanding races, including races from Garden State, reopened this year, and it's a beautiful facility there. Continuing on throughout the fall, we're going to see potential horses of the year. We will see one in the Trot at Mohawk Raceway practice. He is a contender. The final race of the season, of the Breeders' Crown season, the 3-year-old pace back at Garden State, and this one will presumably feature Nihilator. Now, Nihilator is the horse everyone is talking about this year. He is the fastest racing harness horse of all time. He's done most of his winning on the mile tracks, but yesterday, something different for Nihilator.
Well, everyone wondered if he could handle a half-mile track. His trainer, Bill Houghton, said there was no question about it, and yesterday in the Little Brown Jug, he proved it, as he showed his dominance once again.
He's won the big money races. He's set the records. Well, he has won a classic, and Nihilator, assuming he stays sound, will go in the final race of our Breeders' Crown Series. So that is a great deal of excitement. But it's all starting tonight, and we do have the trot for the older horses coming up. We're also going to be showing you an Illinois-bred pacing filly race, a big money race here at Sportsman's Park. So there is a lot of excitement. Part of the excitement, the outstanding horses in the big race, in the Breeders' Crown race, a world record holding mare, and that is Babe Cosmos, listed at 5-2. Interestingly, I think that Sandy Bowl is 2-1 in the favorite, he and his entry mate.
Particularly since Babe Cosmos in their last meeting 10 days ago defeated him in a very exciting race by a neck. However, the post positions tonight favor Sandy Bowl, and apparently the crowd here decides that they're going to follow the morning line maker and try for Sandy Bowl. But Babe Cosmos will be difficult, and I think that there's a horse in there who likes this racetrack and who's a late season horse, Op Art, who you'll hear from before it's all over.
Crowning Point will get support. He's an extremely fast horse who has had some problems. Trackside for us again this year, Kenny Rice, who will be in the paddock and along the track looking at the horses as they get ready, and also taking a good close look at this track at Sportsman's Park. Kenny?
Thank you very much, Sharon. I'm here in the paddock area of Sportsman's Park. This is a track with a varied and rich racing history. This was the home track to the great standard-bred Rambling Willie, the horse that God loved. Back in the 1920s on this site, there was a dog track. But with new ownership in the early 1930s, a new form of racing came to Sportsman's, with a half-mile oval replacing the quarter-mile track for the dogs and a half-mile oval coming in for the thoroughbreds. And a lot of great jockeys have passed through here, along with a lot of great thoroughbreds, including back in the early 1930s, a man who began his career riding here, the great Eddie Arcaro. There was another young jockey who also passed through this way back in 1934. He was the Sportsman's top rider that season. He was destined to be a great one. His name was Johnny Longden, as you take a look at Eddie Arcaro. Progressing from there, Sportsman's Park in 1949 became the first track in America to offer both standardbred and also thoroughbred racing under the lights. The evolution continues to now a 5/8 mile track, which is different from other 5/8 mile track. Now, a man who has witnessed many of the changes here at Sportsman's Park is our colleague Stan Bergstein. Stan was here as a racing secretary and also a track announcer. And Stan, this 5/8 mile track has the big turn, a tight turn, sort of like a half-mile track, but then you have the big stretch like a mile track.
Well, Kenny makes a good point that this is just not shaped like normal tracks. A very long stretch and very sharp turns. Why would they design it that way?
They didn't design it that way. In 1949, when this track opened for harness racing, it was a half-mile track and was till 1955. But in 1953, Brandywine in Delaware and Hazel Park in Detroit opened as 5/8 and became very popular. They featured big, wide turns and relatively short stretches. But they couldn't do that here at Sportsman because they have another racetrack, Hawthorne, right next door in the barn area. So all they did was lengthen the stretches. Brandywine is 608 feet. Hazel Park is 615 feet from the turn to the wire. Sportsman's Park is 902 feet. So it's half-mile track turns and long, long stretches.
And, of course, that will change the strategy, we've got to presume, in a big race like this one. Well, that is all ahead. We are going to take a short time out and then be back with the 2-year-old filly Pace as well as the Breeders' Crown race for older trotters. All that coming up.
This ESPN program is being brought to you by Castleton Farm, tradition of excellence, commitment to the future, and by U.S. Air, with service to over 100 cities across the U.S. and Canada.
Welcome back to Sportsman's Park in Cicero, Illinois, where the Breeders' Crown race for older trotters is just ahead. And we've got some outstanding horses in this field. The favorite, at least the possible favorite, we'll see what the bettors do, Sandy Bowl. This is a horse that wasn't quite up to his more illustrious stablemate last year. Sandy Bowl was second in the Breeders' Crown trot for 3-year-olds, but Stan, this year he's turned into quite a horse.
Well, he's turned into quite a horse, but he's also retained that seconditis. He has been second in his last 4 starts. In 2 of those races where he was second to 2 of the greatest trotters in the world from Europe. Meadow Road defeated him at the Meadowlands in New Jersey, and then Meadow Road is from Sweden and possibly is the best trotter in the world today. And then Lutine de Signy from France came over, and again Sandy Bowl was second. And he was second in his last start, of course, to Babe Cosmos. However, being second hasn't prevented him from winning over $1 million. He is one of 7 trotters, United States trotters, who have won over $1 million.
Well, speaking of Babe Cosmos, this is the mare, the one who does certainly have a chance to beat the male horses. She's done it many times before and done it most recently, setting a world record. So Babe Cosmos, a 5-year-old Speedy Crown mare who emerged as an outstanding horse just last year. She was not a great young horse. This is one of her outstanding efforts in the last month. Since then, she went on to set another world record, beating Sandy Bowl in the process. This is some mare.
This mare, well, underwent surgery this year. She's racing tonight as an entry with Speed Merchant, and both of those horses share something else in common besides being stablemate. They were both operated on at New Bolton Center in Pennsylvania for what's known as a trapped epiglottis. It's a throat ailment which closes off the windpipe. And they also had soft palate operations. And Speed Merchant had about 95% wind loss, they discovered. Babe Cosmos had about 50%. The operation on Babe Cosmos was a total success. We'll find out about Speed Merchant a little bit more tonight.
Well, we also find out about a horse who's had some problems, but nobody doubts his speed, and that is Crowning Point, one of the fastest trotters anywhere. Unfortunately, he's a horse who has trouble staying on stride and has had a few problems. Most recently, I saw him at Du Quoin at this time trial, where he was absolutely spectacular for a half mile as the prompter chased him. He couldn't stay on stride. It's a problem with this horse, isn't it?
He has some physical problems, I believe, that lead to it, and he has some emotional problems, I think, that lead to it. And I know that Doug Ackerman, who trains and drives him and is one of the consummate trainers of trotters in the sport, Doug has picked up a few gray hairs with this horse because he's had total belief in him. He knows, not feels, but knows that he's one of the fastest trotters in the world. Whether he'll be able to master the turns here at Sportsman's, I don't know, because he's had some problem in that area. And he also, of course, had some physical problems. There you saw him go off stride, which ruined the chance for him to set a world record. He has the speed potential to do it, but it's just this breaking in gait which causes all of his distress and Ackerman's distress.
Well, one horse that we had hoped to see here this year, in fact, she was kept in training at least partially to try for this race, was Fancy Crown, the 1984 Harness Horse of the Year. Unfortunately, she's had physical problems all year. She had a throat problem, and finally a hoof injury has ended her career. It's not serious. She's going to be off to be a broodmare next year. Will be bred to Super Bowl, I think the plans are. But Fancy Crown, last year's Harness Horse of the Year, not here, which is disappointing because she was certainly a wonderful horse. But she had her impact on the Breeders' Crown Series last year. So that is a look at the best known, I would guess, horses in the field, but there are other good ones, and there's also a good race just ahead. We'll take a short time out and be back. We're back at Sportsman's Park. I'm Sharon Smith along with Stan Bergstein and Kenny Rice. The race we are about to see is the orange and blue filly division. This is a stake for 2-year-old Illinois-bred fillies. And these fillies are racing for a lot of money. Total purse $164,000. Most of these fillies have not won anywhere near that, so they're just starting to get into the big money. Interesting field. A couple of fillies with the potential for being really outstanding, Stan.
Well, there was one that drew an awful lot of support here in the Chicago area, a filly called Skip the Puddin', who has won 5 of her 9 starts and has been 4 times second and knows that she didn't win. But she was upset in her last start by a filly who's in this race tonight called Annie's Surprise that has not yet been beaten. She's made 3 starts, 3 wins, and has won all 3 of them by 3.5 lengths. She's being driven by Mark O'Mara, who is a young 28-year-old son of Frank O'Mara, one of the outstanding trainers in the sport, who just lost, incidentally, a great horse in the 2-year-old colt, Armbro Elvis, and who had the great trotter Mystic Park. Frank's sons Mark and Danny are racing here tonight. Mark driving in this race with Annie's Surprise, and Danny will be driving, of course, Babe Cosmos in the big race.
In fact, Annie's Surprise updated those odds from there. It's 4 to 5. She's actually odds on. Well, this is a filly that would certainly have a chance against her, Skip the Puddin', and she's a good-looking filly here.
She is a good-looking filly. Tommy Insko is a son of Del Insko, who used to race here in the Chicago area, now races in New York, and was a national driving champion back in the early 1960s. Del's very proud of this young boy, and the young boy's very proud of this filly that he drives for Elmer Stratman here in Chicago, and John Carica's a prominent restaurant owner in New York.
In fact, 5 wins and 4 seconds in her 9 pari-mutuel starts, so she, too, along with Annie's Surprise, has a very consistent record. These are 2 good fillies, and we certainly hope to see a good competition between them as these fillies line up behind the gate. And it is time for us to send it to track announcer Gil Levine.
Thank you, Sharon, and good evening, ladies and gentlemen, from atop the roof here at Sportsman's Park. It's a little close, this booth, but step right in and join me now as we take these fillies down to the start. All up there nicely. Infinite Wind Song out in the middle. Along the rail, there's Good Nighty up there. All ready. They're off. That's Infinite Wind Song out for the early lead between horses. Jan's Julie with Lustrous Rainbow. On the wood is Good Nighty. They look for position with the rush on the outside. That's Sable Sue taking the lead. It's Sable Sue, the leader, racing in second. Infinite Wind Song. Lustrous Rainbow is third. Racing in fourth, Jan's Julie on the outside. In fifth now is Annie's Surprise by the quarter, 29 and a tick. Sable Sue leads 1.5 lengths. Racing in second, Infinite Wind Song. Lustrous Rainbow is third. Jan's Julie fourth on the outside. Fifth, that's Annie's Surprise with Good Nighty. Sixth, racing in seventh. Skip the Puddin', Miss K. Michael is eighth. In ninth, Spring Gift and the Cocoa Butter at the end. They go to the half. Sable Sue's had the best of it, still does by 2 lengths. Racing in second, Infinite Wind Song, the half mile, 59 and 4. Sable Sue opens it up, leads by 3 lengths. Infinite Wind Song is second on the outside. Annie's Surprise comes on third. Lustrous Rainbow is fourth. Racing in fifth. Good Nighty, they Skip the Puddin', 3 deep on the outside. Sixth with Miss K. Michael seventh. Along the rail, Jan's Julie is eighth. Into the 3/4, it's Sable Sue, 1 length and 3/4 to 3/4, 129. Sable Sue holding firm by 2, racing in second. Annie's Surprise, Infinite Wind Song is third. A 2-horse battle in the stretch. Under a drive is Sable Sue. Annie's Surprise trying to close on the outside. It's Sable Sue on the inside, but Annie's Surprise is cooking up a wicked brew. That's Annie's Surprise on the outside, taking the lead. Annie's Surprise wins the orange and blue. Sable Sue second. Skip the Puddin' third. The mile, 158 and 2.
And thank Thank you very much, Gil. A very good performance by this filly, Annie Surprise, who remains unbeaten in her pari-mutuel start. She is very impressive. In fact, just 2/5 off the 2-year-old pacing filly track record here.
I understand now why she has a little class. She has a touch of class here because early on, she just sat outside of that field of horses, and Mark O'Mara did a very, very deliberate and capable job with this filly. She is by a horse called Keystone Accent, whose Mark's father, Frank, raced here in the Chicago area. He has not been bred to too many top mares, but the flying Brett mare Annie Special, who he was bred to this time, has produced a classy little filly here. She's now 4 for 4, and this mile tonight in 1:58 and 2, an easy victory for her and an impressive one, Sharon.
It was certainly a respectable time for a 2-year-old filly with as little experience as this one has had, especially on a cool night. So I think her people cannot be at all disappointed. She was a tough little filly, too. She didn't have an easy trip past this filly that led most of the way.
Oh, she had an outside post. They start 9 wide here. She had post position 9, and Mark just eased her away. And as expected, Sable Sue, who had won 3 of 6 starts and was second in the other 2, went to the front. O'Mara just let Annie Surprise race by herself on the outside, and when they came down through the lane, she locked into the leader, and then, as you saw, wore her down coming down through the lane. Classy filly, gonna be all right.
It also does show us how much time these drivers do have in that stretch to make their move to the outside. He didn't have to move right away as soon as he came out of the turn. He had a little time to settle her down.
Now that 900-foot stretch, if you have the quality and the class, you can get by in that lane. You don't have too much trouble in the lane with traffic unless you get into a pack of horses, which she didn't have, and the only one that she had to beat, she did.
Well, that's Annie Surprise, the winner in 1:58 and 2, so she is now a stakes winning filly, and she's added considerably to her bankroll, which had stood at only about $10,000 going in. Well, it's a lot more than that
she
now.
She picked up $82,000 right there.
This is a rich little filly now. So Annie Surprise, the winner of the orange and blue. The Breeders' Crown Trot for older trotters is still to come. We're going to take a short time out, then bring you right back to Sportsman's Park. Welcome back to Sportsman's Park, where we are about to watch the Breeders' Crown, first Breeders' Crown race of the 1985 season. And here's something that you'll want to watch. It's our top-ranked boxing broadcast from Las Vegas, September 25th, 9 p.m. Eastern Time. The NABF featherweight title on the line, Tommy Cordova and Joe Ruelas. And they will meet. Again, that is the 25th of September, 9 p.m. Eastern Time. We've already seen one great race here tonight, the orange and blue filly division, a stakes race for Illinois breds, and the winner of that one, Annie Surprise. And Annie Surprise paying, what you have to say, slightly generous odds from a filly that went off odds on. $3.40, $3, and $2.40 for Annie Surprise. And in second place, Sable Sue paying $4.60 and $2.80. In third place, Skip to Puddin', she paid $2.60 to Show. Now, it's went pretty much according to form. We'll have to see if we can expect the same sort of thing in the big race coming up. No surprises really there, Stan.
No, the filly raced like an odds-on favorite should, and I was very impressed with young O'Mara's drive. He had supreme confidence in her ability, and obviously off those 3 smashing victories she showed here in last quarters in 28 and 3/5 seconds, he knew he had plenty left. She's a strong closing filly, and the race was cut pretty much to her liking.
Well, everything worked out well for this favorite in this race, but it is an unusual kind of track, and I think drivers have to come in to be and are a little bit concerned about what's going to happen in the race on this unusual track. Kenny Rice looked into that situation, and here's what he found out.
Some horsemen will say there are 5/8 mile tracks, and then there is the 5/8 at Sportsman's, for it is unlike any other 5/8 track in North America. It has the longest straight stretch, 902 feet, which is longer than some mile tracks, but it also has tight turns, similar to those on half-mile tracks. Makes for some interesting strategy among the drivers.
And it's a little tight and get a little cramped around there, especially if you go into it full tilt and your horse isn't that handy in a turn. So you gotta be on your toes. You gotta watch it a little bit. But the fellows who drive here, I don't think they really realize how sharp it is because they're on it all the time and they adjust themselves to it. So.
I kind of treat it as a normal 5/8 track. The stretches are a lot longer. You try to avoid being 3 wide in the last turn, but other than that, it's pretty much normal 5/8.
John, this is a different type of 5/8 track because you have turns similar to those on a half mile. Then you have a big straight, which is longer than some mile tracks. Does it affect the times of the horses?
Oh, maybe a little bit overall. The turns are tighter than even some half-mile tracks, and you got that big, long straightaway to work with, and it definitely affects the strategy of the race more than the times.
And here at Sportsman's, there is an advantage for the fans with these long straights and tight turns because the backstretch is very close to the action here of the fans, and the fans can keep an eye on their horse all the way around the track. Sharon?
Well, Kenny, the big race is just ahead, and the bettors are having their say right now, and there's some interesting things going on. The odds, of course, are changing constantly, and these will not be the odds necessarily that these horses go off at. And the fans are giving the support to the horses that we thought they would, although maybe not in the order that we thought that they would. It does look like Sandy Bowl is going to be the favorite of the crowd, with the entry including Babe Cosmos as the second choice and Crowning Point third. Anything unusual in these odds that you notice here, Stan?
Well, the one thing you have to keep in mind is that the numbers that you're seeing, which are program numbers, are not the post positions. And one of the reasons they're backing Sandy Bowl is because he has the rail. It's always an asset, of course. There's a 3-horse entry, Babe Cosmos, Speed Merchant, and Why Not, with Babe Cosmos carrying the weight of the entry, obviously. She is the strong part of the entry. It's a common interest entry. 2 of the horses are trained by Joe Carluzzi, who is a partnership with Mickey McNichol.
Well, that's certainly a powerful entry for people to get to bet on. But the Sandy Bowl entry is currently even money. These odds are changing. We'll have to see what happens. We're going to take another time out from Sportsman's Park and then be back with the older horse Trot. And this field, Stan Burstein, includes the fastest trotting mare, as opposed to trotting filly, the fastest trotting mare of all time. In fact, she is number 1. She is the head number 1 in this post parade.
That's Babe Cosmos, who set the world record of 155 and 2 for older mares in her last start, beating Sandy Bowl. And she's being driven by Daniel O'Mara. We just saw his brother, Mark O'Mara, win the orange and blue for the Illini here with the 2-year-old pacing filly from Illinois.
And 1A, her entry mate, Speed Merchant, who has been a top horse for a couple years now.
Been a very fast horse. He's had some problems, and he had a throat operation, too, at the same time, Babe Cosmos. He's only made 5 starts this year, and he will have to improve dramatically. He's being driven by Tom Harmer.
And Why Not, the 1D horse from the Sunbird stable. This is a horse who hasn't won much this year, but he's very consistent. He's usually right there.
He hadn't won much this year, but he's won $803,000 in 2 seasons. He was a great 2-year-old, and he is being driven by Mickey McNichol.
And Sandy Ball, the prime horse in the number 2 entry, and he's the big one, more than $1 million.
If he wins tonight, he'll go to $1,299,000 and making him second among North American trotters, surpassed only by Savoir. He's being driven by John Campbell.
And Keystone Edmund, interesting horse, hasn't raced in a year.
3 starts in 3 years. He was in stud duty, as a matter of fact. He's had all sorts of lameness problems, and their owner thought he looked pretty good. He brought him back to the race. He's had 1 time trial, and coming into this big race off of that was Jan Nordin, the great Swedish driver, driving him.
And the number 3 horse is Crowning Point. This is the one that everybody agrees is fast, but will he stay trotting, and what will he do on these turns?
He has post position 2, which won't help him going into the turn either, and we'll see how fast. There's no question about his speed. He's beaten Sandy Bowl, but whether or not he can carry it and whether he'll be erratic, we'll have to find out. Doug Ackerman drives.
The number 4 horse is Op Art. Now, this is an intriguing horse. You can get some pretty generous odds on him at 4-1, and this is a horse that knows this track. We know he can handle this track.
That's young Bruce Regal driving him. Regal's 31. His father, Gene Regal, who trains the horse, was a great star here in the 60s, and his grandfather, Roy Regal, used to drive a top-notch trotter called Dalzell here 30 years ago. The family has a Chicago inheritance. This is a late fall horse, Sharon.
And that is Op Art, and he'll probably get some local money. Now, Garland Lobel is next up.
Evita Berline, who was supposed to have been in the race, was scratched, came up with 104 fever. Garland Lobel is an outsider in post position with 6 and in the odds as well. He's being driven by Gilles Gendron, great star from Montreal, Bluebonnets.
And then number 7 is Bobo. Now, this is an 8-year-old who hasn't won a race this year. He's been around, it seems like forever, and has won a lot of money, and kind of a tough place to get your first win.
The owner bought him in 1981. He's won $800,000. There's Op Art, and I'm glad that we're back on him in the camera because I think that you're going to see a lot of him in this race. This horse is coming into peak form now, and if anyone can handle Babe Cosmos or Sandy Bowl, which is questionable, this would be the one I would think might be able to come close.
If indeed there's a horse that is really suited to a track, that's the one. Why would somebody try to get his first win of the year in a race like this?
Well, you know, this horse, as I say, he's won $800,000. He's a good kind of horse, and Greg Coleman, who owns him, is a venture capitalist, so he's a speculator, and he's speculating tonight that he might get a share. The purse here is $354,000. It's worth taking a shot at. Richest purse ever for older trotters.
It's absolutely worth taking a shot at, but his odds are pretty darn long, 25-1 right now against that horse winning everything. In the meantime, the Crowning Point entry remains even money, and the Babe Cosmos entry not far behind that. The race is still ahead, just about 5 minutes away. They're all racing for $177,000 first prize. We'll be back. We're back at Sportsman's Park, where the Breeders' Crown Trot for 4-year-olds and up is just about 3.5 minutes away. This series has traditionally lured the best drivers in the country. Many of them are here again tonight, including Doug Ackerman, Jan Nordin, and John Campbell, who's seen a lot of these races before. Here's Kenny.
Last year, one man drove in all 8 of the Breeders' Crown races. He accounted for over $7 million in earnings last year from the Breeders' Crown series alone. His horses brought in over $580,000. He is John Campbell. Nice little chunk of change for you out of the Breeders' Crown, too, John. I imagine the other drivers ask you to buy the dinners a lot.
Well, that happens quite a bit. The Breeders' Crown definitely helped our earning power towards the end of the year last year.
Aside from the financial rewards of the Breeders' Crown, what does it mean for you, for other drivers? And you come from a horse background. Your father was a noted horseman in Ontario, Jim. What does it mean for you to be involved in this series?
Well, it's a big thrill. It's just really in its infancy stages, and I think it's going to take off. And it's something that a lot of the drivers like myself are going to grow with, and just great to be part of it.
One of the things that the Breeders' Crown set out to do last year, and it did in many cases, it helped determine the champion at the end of the season.
Yes, it certainly did, and I'm sure that's going to happen again this year. It's if there's any doubt going into the final part of the year, the Breeders' Crown will certainly settle it. When you first heard about the Breeders' Crown, when the concept first came around a couple of years ago, before becoming reality in 1984, what was your thoughts on the time? Well, I thought it was a great idea. I'm still don't know whether the best idea is to go with a format where they go all in one day or they're spread out. I think there's advantages to both, and I think they're playing it by ear, and they seem to have an open mind, and they're going to just wait and see what happens and how it goes this year again. In all 10 of them this year? I don't think so. I think there's a couple that I won't be able to make, but I'll be in every one I can. Good luck tonight. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, John Campbell.
Well, he's certainly got a chance tonight. He's driving the favorite. This is Sandy Bowl, the #2 horse, and his entry is currently at 4-5.
We should mention, incidentally, that his entry partner, Why Not, who has post position 10, despite the fact that Evito Broline has been scratched. There are 9 horses wide on this racetrack at the start. But in the rules of harness racing, if you draw into the second tier, as Why Not did, you cannot move up when a horse is scratched from the first tier. So you will see Why Not trailing the pole horse, Sandy Bowl, when the start comes on the backstretch. And of course, on a 5/8 mile track, the start is on the backstretch. They come around 3/8 of a mile to the wire, and then around once more, the 5/8, completing the mile.
Okay, then here again, we're looking at the odds, and they do change up to post time, so these will not necessarily be the final odds, but they'll be pretty close. They won't be affected that much unless some very rich person comes in and places a bet within the next couple of minutes. So it looks like Sandy Bowl is going to be the favorite, even though Babe Cosmos beat him last time out. And Babe Cosmos is the fastest older mare in the history of trotting.
And you just saw one of the reasons for that, Sharon, John Campbell. This gentleman, who is 30 years old, has driven the winners of over $30 million in the last 6 years. And the people here know that, and they are betting him as well as Sandy Bowl.
Well, that's certainly not necessarily a bad thing to do. He certainly knows how to drive a horse. Jan Nordin, this is a man who knows all about horses, too, especially trotters, chose to drive Keystone Edmund.
Well, he and his father, Soren Nordin, come from Sweden, and a few years ago when they come over, there's a lot of skepticism about their training methods. Some people thought that they trained horses too hard and too fast. They have changed American thinking about that, and many American trainers are now adopting their methods. They've had brilliant success. He's going to have a big job with this horse, though the horse is not raced and is coming off of just one qualifying race, which is a big order in this field.
As the horses start to line up, we'll talk a little bit about Babe Cosmos. This is a trotting race, which means that you can't automatically say, oh, it's just a mare.
Well, it's interesting. There have been 9 trotting mares that have held the world record in harness racing history, and only 2 pacers. The most recent trotter to hold it was a Fancy Crown last year. The last pacing mare to hold it was in 1855, a mare called Pocahontas.
And it's a mystery that's never fully been solved why the trotting mares are so good, although a lot of people have opinions about it.
Pacing mares can't hold their own with males, but trotting mares can.
And of course there are exceptions in both categories, but they are exceptions. You know, a good trotting mare is not all that far behind, and Babe Cosmos is a good trotting mare.
Field moves in behind that starting gate in front of the stands, swings around the clubhouse turn to the backstretch, and then the starting point is on the mid backstretch. They come around 3/8 again and then loop the track one more time. 3 big turns.
And again, it's critical to start in any race, but with trotters, you want them on their gait so they don't get any funny ideas as they head around the turn. Now, they are lining up behind the gate as we approach the first race of the 1985 Breeders' Crown Series. Gil Levine is the race caller. Let's send it to Gil right now.
All right, Sharon, back here in the booth. Horses now heading east towards the start. Right up there along the inside, Sandy Bowl. Right alongside, Crowning Point's up there. They're all going well. All on stride. Looks like a good start now in the Breeders' Crown. And they're off. That's Sandy Bowl for the early lead. Ockbart out in the middle of the track, left well. Driving up on the outside is the Speed Merchant. They look for position. That's Ockbart ahead. Sandy Bowl holds the inside second. Speed Merchant third. Bobo is 4 wide on the turn, and Ockbart went off stride. It's Sandy Bowl, the leader. Speed Merchant out there second. On the inside, racing in third as they go by the quarter-mile pole. Babe Cosmos, the quarter, 29 seconds, and now up on the outside to take their lead is the Speed Merchant. Racing in second, Sandy Bowl in third position as they pass the stands the first time. Why not? Bobo is fourth, Babe Cosmos racing fifth. Crowning Point is sixth. In seventh, that's Keystone Edmond racing eighth as they go to the half-mile pole now. Garmin Lobel and trailing after them is Q. Ockbart the half in 58 seconds on the backside. The leader by a length is the Speed Merchant. Sandy Bowl trotting second and drives from second. 3 wide is Babe Cosmos. They're 3 across as they go to the 3/4. Sandy Bowl, the leader on the outside, racing second. Babe Cosmos crowning points into the action third. The leader is Sandy Bowl, a length and a half. Crowning Point down along the inside second. The 3/4, 127 and 4. Sandy Bowl's bringing it home, 6 lengths to the good. Racing in second is Babe Cosmos. In the final 1/8 of a mile, it's Sandy Bowl opening up an 8-length lead. Babe Cosmos trotting second. Racing in third is Crowning Point. On the front end, the leader by 6 lengths is Sandy Bowl. Sandy Bowl wins it. Babe Cosmos second. Racing third at the wire. As they go into that club turn there, the third horse, Crowning Point.
Well, thank you, Gil, and I guess the bettors knew what they were doing.
They knew what they were doing, and they got a new track record here.
Boy, did they.
156 and 3, and Sharon, you saw a remarkable performance by horse and man on the backstretch. When John Campbell brought Sandy Bowl out to make his drive, he hit the wheel of the horse in front of him, Speed Merchant at the time. It was a tribute to the horse that he caught as quickly, but it's also a great tribute to Campbell that he caught that horse immediately and kept right on trotting. Very tight. The horse in front of him was getting a little bit tired. John got out of there and just nipped the wheel as he came out, but the horse kept right on going for him, and that's one of the reasons that John Campbell is one of the great drivers in the history of the sport.
In fact, they took a full second off the track record here. It was previously shared by Green Speed and Dream of Glory.
Yeah,
Both of them set it in the middle of the summer, and this horse did it on a cool fall night, so all the more impressive, this performance by Sandy Bowl.
Let's take a look at that action again if we can. If we see that backstretch, you'll see what happens as Campbell comes out. Well, he's already out here. He's got to the front. And at this point, Babe Cosmos tried to make a valiant move, moved up, but you see Campbell just lets loose, and Sandy Bull responds and draws away. He now, with this victory, moves up in earnings to $1,299,199, and that makes him second among all North American trotting horses. Savoir, a great iron-sided gelding, won $1.3 million. There you see Campbell, confident, looking back just over his left shoulder to see where the others are, but he has nothing to worry about here at this long, long stretch. And Sandy Bull, at this point, Sharon, must have relished the thought.
Yeah, he didn't look like he minded going that extra distance, that extra 300 yards that he probably does, 300 feet that he normally doesn't see. This horse doesn't have that much earning potential left, and that's one of the problems with aged trotters. He's a stallion. He will go to stud.
Well,
it's a good thing that he had
will.
this.
It's, you know, his dam, Keystone Sandal, was by Overtrick, who was a pacing mare, but the dam trotted herself. And the man who bred her, Ed Ryan, the great Ryan Holmes home builder, sold this one, kept the wrong one. He has a good brother called Sandy Casey.
Well, he's certainly the best I think we have on this side of the Atlantic in terms of older trotters right
Absolutely
now.
No question about it.
Marvelous performance by Sandy Bull, the first Breeders' Crown winner of 1985. We'll be back at Sportsman's Park in just a minute. We're back at Sportsman's Park, where you're looking at the first winner of a Breeders' Crown race in 1985, and I'll tell you, the other 9 are going to have to go some to be as impressive as this one. This is Sandy Bull, the winner of the Trot for horses 4-year-olds and up. Sandy Bull, the winner, also a winner, John Campbell, who's added a little bit more money to his Breeders' Crown payroll. Let's go to Kenny Rice.
Thank you very much, Sharon. Congratulations, John Campbell. You go out in 29 flat and then 58 flat. Did you know that you were on a world record pace?
No, I didn't really think about the world record. I was more concerned with winning. I thought they'd go around 56 and a piece, 57 before the race, though.
He trotted well?
Trotted real well. He's a perfect horse to drive, and he never makes a mistake.
As we pick everything up, coming into the final turn here, John, you had a lot of horse left. You glanced over your shoulder right in that turn. What are you thinking right here?
Well, I was just looking to see if there's anybody live coming. He felt real good right then, and he trotted the turn real good and got away on them, and he just coasted home on his own. The main thing, I didn't want somebody, you know, brushing up and surprising us or anything, but he was well within himself all the way through the stretch.
It would seem that everything went to plan today with you and with Sandy Bull.
Yeah, I wanted to be up near the front and didn't want to get locked in, so it worked out real well.
Very good trotter right now.
Yes, he is. He's been a great trotter all year. It's just a model of consistency.
Congratulations on another win here in the Breeders' Crown, getting the 1985 Breeders' Crown underway.
Thank you very much.
Good seeing you, John Campbell. And a familiar spot for him here in the winner's circle as he takes Sandy Bull home in a record time of 56.3. Sharon, back to you.
Thanks, Kenny. Performances like that and that of practice that we've seen recently and Fancy Crown last year is going to give hope to people that love trotters, because these are marvelous horses. There it is, Sandy Bull, the favorite, the winner, followed by Babe Cosmos, Crowning Point, and Sandy Bull, the first Breeders' Crown champion. We'll be back with more in just a minute. We're back at Sportsman's Park, where we've seen the first Breeders' Crown race for 1985. There are 9 more to come, including one at Pompano Park in Florida in October. And if you'd like a chance to be there to see the Breeders' Crown, in fact, these will be the 3-year-old filly trotters, and it's a very, very deep division this year, you can enter the Breeders' Crown Sweepstakes. Just send a postcard to Breeders' Crown Sweepstakes, 47 Orient Way, Suite 3B. That's in Rutherford, New Jersey, 07070. And you can see it on your screen. Send the postcard, and you will your postcard will be among those from which one will be drawn for a trip for 2 to Pompano Park to see the 3-year-old filly trot. And we have seen a 4-year-old stallion trot tonight who certainly has impressed everybody here. And if we see the rest of these in such form, what a series we've got. There he is. Boy, his owner's got to be proud of him.
His owners are proud of him, and his owners, incidentally, are an interesting trio. He's owned by the KVF stable of Deerfield, Florida, and the KVF is Kaj Håkansson, who is a Swedish dentist practicing in West Germany, his son Victor and his daughter Freya, and thus the K, V, and F. This horse is trained, incidentally. We were talking about the Nordines, father Soren and son Jan, and their assistant Marku Vartanian. He is trained by Team Nordin, the Swedish outfit that came over here 5 years ago and has made a tremendous imprint and impact on American harness racing.
Boy, they've had some good ones. Kenny Rice is enjoying what's going on in the winner's circle, so let's get on to Kenny right now.
Thanks, Sharon. This is an auspicious beginning for the 1985 part of the Breeders' Crown Series. The fans gathering around here in the winner's circle with a lot of anticipation tonight on Sandy Bowl. They bet him down from 2-1 to a 4-5 choice going off, and so that created a lot of excitement among the bettors here tonight. They were glad to see him come through, the ones that had money, and most people did have money tonight in some form on Sandy Bowl. This is a showcase of champions. We've seen one tonight in the trotting division with Sandy Bowl, and we've also seen a champion driver in John Campbell. Look forward next week to the age pace. Sharon?
Thank you, Kenny. And of course, we expect to see on the road again there, and he'll have to work to match this horse, Sandy Bowl, the winner. We're going to take another short time out and then be back with more of what's going on at Sportsman's Park as we open the 1985 Breeders' Crown Series. Remember, every Thursday here on ESPN Down the Stretch, Horse Racing Weekly, that 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time, features and news and highlights of what's going on in horse racing, standardbred racing, thoroughbred racing, sometimes some quarter horses and Arabians, but horse racing every week right here on ESPN. Again, we have seen the Trot for older horses, the first race in the Breeders' Crown Series, and Kenny Rice has been in the paddock the entire time, or in the winner's circle and paddock. Let's go to Kenny in the winner's circle right now.
Thanks, Sharon. One of the things that the people at the Breeders' Crown wanted to do this season, with including the age trotters and pacers, to give fans a chance to see some of the older horses and to give incentive for the breeders and the owners and the trainers to keep these older horses on the track. It was nice tonight to see Bobo coming back on the track tonight, as well as seeing Sandy Bowl with that incredible 156-3 performance. For Sandy Bowl, who was good as a 2- and 3-year-old, even better as a 4-year-old. That is the purpose of the age events, to keep the horses on the track, give the fans something to root for. And in Sandy Bowl, they had that tonight, as well as seeing some of the other horses who had good campaigns as 3-year-olds, but are stronger and better horses this year. It was also good to see them in tonight's lineup. Sharon?
Well, thank you very much, Kenny. We saw the older trotters tonight, and next week in Maryland, we are going to see the older pacers, and what a race that should be, because it does include Stan, the richest harness horse of all time, the horse that some people think is the greatest competitive harness horse that we've seen in years.
Well, he is one of the toughest, and he's in the tradition of Horse of the Year, Campbell. They race the same kind of campaign. They start early, raced all year, and race late, and of course we're talking about on the road again. He is an iron tough horse, and he has been racing magnificently for Buddy Gilmore, who has been driving him all season. Of course, Gilmore, one of the best in the business.
And of course, he's out virtually every week, and he has lost a couple. In fact, when last week he won here at Free State, he was coming off of a couple of very tough losses, but he's out there all the time, and he's usually winning. A lot of people really are fond of this horse.
He is. He has built a lot of fan support, and he is one of those horses with charisma. Not all horses have it, but on the road again is one that has, and he is very much in the running for Horse of the Year this year, along with Nihilator and Practice.
What about this horse, Sandy Bowl? The problem with him is there aren't many races for him to show his stuff yet. Well, it's kind of an unfortunate thing. Thank God he had this one.
He had this one, and of course there'll be some interesting meetings. If he keeps racing, two of the horses that we mentioned to beat him, Latin de Signy of France and Meadow Road of Sweden, would be great if we get another meeting of those horses again. I am pretty sure, I was surprised John Campbell didn't mention about ticking that wheel. Maybe he didn't tick the wheel, but he definitely fumbled as he came out of that hole. And the recovery that he made, both for horse and man, was very impressive, and I was surprised that John didn't even mention it down there. He takes things casually these days.
It was such an easy win. Maybe he'd forgotten about it by then.
So the horse certainly had.
It's important to get these horses back. These two races this week and next are so important for this sport, aren't they?
Well, it is, and of course it's a great thing now that the Breeders' Crown has introduced in this electronic grand circuit where these horses travel from track to track. People get to see the champions of the sport. Races for the older horses, because as you said, they've had limited purses after their 3-year-old season. This will help them go on, and it'll help tonight project the winner here, Sandy Bowl, into second in the all-time standings with $1,300,000.
It's funny how these races last year and the first race this year, pretty much the best horses won, the best drivers win. We've certainly seen that. It's been a great first year and a great start to the second year of the Breeders' Crown Championship Series. So Sandy Bowl, the winner of what we call the age trot, but don't think it means that they're decrepit. Obviously not, as fast as this horse went tonight. So as we leave you, I'm Sharon Smith with Stan Bergstein and Kenny Rice. We are going to give you one last look at Sandy Bowl, who raced a magnificent mile here at Sportsman's Park tonight. Congratulations to him, his owners, and John Campbell.
This ESPN program has been brought to you by US Air, with service to over 100 cities across the United States and Canada. And by Hanover Shoe Farms. Tomorrow's champions are at Hanover Shoe Farms.